Ladies and gentlemen, if you're all ready, we go a little bit out of order. We're gonna start with a keeper talk. Our North Trail superstar, Ryan Peterson.
That's right, yeah, so if you guys don't know me, I'm Ryan Peterson, North Trail area keeper, but you guys can all just call me.
Last name, I thought you were just Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. But you guys can all just call me your favorite zookeeper. But I got to go to this Otter Conservation workshop in Seattle a few months ago. It was pretty neat, cool networking, not a whole lot of zookeepers there. It was more like biologists, DNR, game and fish, which was cool. That's actually what I went to school for, so it was cool to see the equation for carrying capacity and all the confusing graphs all again. Most of it was about sea otters, but there was some really interesting stuff about river otters that I'll show you guys. But we'll start a little bit on what they're kind of doing with their sea otters. So way back during the fur trade, sea otters were almost extinct because they were overhunted for their pelt. But where you can find them actually is all the way through Alaska, all the way down to Washington, and then there's a weird gap in Oregon, and then all the way down into California. And then they broke them off northern and southern sea otters. And then you can see their population actually has been growing quite a bit. Over the last 20 years, it's been over 50%. And then the red list that says that you're endangered, critically endangered, if you go over 50% in 20 years, they delist you. So if you're critically endangered, you go to endangered. If you're endangered, you go to vulnerable, which is not really a good thing because their numbers are going up, but they're still not at the numbers they were before the fur trade. And they're kind of at this weird plateau here, carrying capacity. And then so they're just basically saying that this is what can hold these sea otters so they can't grow anymore. But what's happening right now, which is really cool, is they're reintroducing the sea otter in Oregon. So they're going to combine those two ways, and then now the population will go up even more. And that's happening right now. So you guys can look it all up. Some of the ways they kind of survey for these guys, most of the time they just have people stand on cliffs with binoculars. Some people do boats, but that seemed kind of frowned upon. They didn't seem to like that as much. Or they go on a plane and they take a bunch of pictures. When they do that, they pretty much have like 40,000 pictures to go through, and then they have to look at each one and see, is this an otter, is it not? But this guy made an app called Sea Otter. Sea Otter, it's pretty good. And it basically goes through the photos and it takes away the photo and says, is this an otter? Then you look through that and say, yes, it is an otter. So it might take 3 weeks to go through all those, or 3 months to go through all those photos. This one, he said, you know, you fly for 8 hours, get all the pictures, plug it in that night, work for 8 hours the next day. Instead of 40,000 photos, you only have 40,000 to go through. So you can do way more surveys and it's way faster. They like to survey the kelp forest, and they usually do that by person. You only, like scuba diving, you only have a limited amount of oxygen and you can get tangled up. So they wanted to use these ROVs, but they're giant, they're like this big, so of course they're gonna get tangled. But they brought it there and they showed us, they made really small ones, and they can just remote control, go through the kelp forest, and they can actually maneuver if they get tangled, to get untangled. They do outreaches, so they let kids play with them, and they basically use an Xbox controller. And it's pretty awesome. And then drones, like I said, they stand on cliffs, but you have to find volunteers, everything to look for the otters. So they're using drones, but what they're trying to figure out is how high they can go without the otters freaking out, and are they freaking out because something's above them, or is it because it's louder, it sounds weird. And just like our river otters, sea otters are a keystone species, so they eat the urchin, clams, crabs, that keeps the kelp forest all nice and healthy, and actually as they're digging down into the seagrass for clams, it's actually pollinating the seagrass, so it makes it way healthier. Another neat thing that they were finding in Alaska was, so we have bears, they go through a torpor, so right before winter they get all nice and fat. They might wake up after a week, 2 weeks, go out, find food, no food, go back to sleep, but if there is food, they're gonna keep eating. So when the tide goes up, sea otters go down and they dig all these holes, tide goes down, and then the bears go in, dig up these clams in the holes, eat those, and then actually use pockets of fish too. So then they can eat all that. So they're finding fat bears all winter long that aren't going in the torpor because they have such a high food source right there from sea otters. And then they're actually seeing brown bears eating sea otters as well. Another cool thing, there's a pack of wolves that usually eat deer. Deer population went down, the crazy amount of sea otters, so that's their main diet. So not only are sea otters keeping the seas healthy, but they're also bringing your forest animals into the coastline and keeping them healthy as well. So So on the other otter hand, these were some other topics that I just thought were kind of neat. Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of otters holding hands? Yeah. So this person from Sea Otter Savvy, she was a huge conflict. People were arguing all this other stuff. She says it's not true. We shouldn't promote it. But I guess it happened in a zoo once, went viral. Now it's on everything you buy. And she says she never uses the cute word because she doesn't want people that think they're cute. She wants people that want to save the sea otters, like committed to it. But I disagree with that. Why not have those people and the people that think they're cute? It really doesn't hurt. And then toxoplasmosis, we actually worry about that here at the zoo. So it's in cat urine, cat feces, they go to the bathroom, another animal eats it, say a mouse. It makes them all weird, pretty much just easy prey. Cat eats it, starts the cycle all over again. In California, they have all these feral cats, so they're going to the bathroom all over the place. The wet season flushes it all into the ocean, it's getting into the clams, sea otters are eating it, so they're finding all these dead sea otters from this, but you wouldn't expect it because it should be on land. And then we worry about this too. If our cats are peeing in our hay or anything like that here at the zoo, we toss it. We don't want to risk it. And then the nasal mites, those people hang out with the most for whatever reason, but it's an up and coming issue. So nasal mites are supposed to be external, but they're going inside the nose. So it's weird how they're supposed to be out of the body, but they're in the body at the same time. They're trying to figure out how to kill these things. So they had all these slides of all these different chemicals, and they can't kill them. They're having this huge issue. And there's different species of these mites, so some only go to sea otters, some only go to sea lions. But it's really hard to tell. The Seattle Aquarium actually had one sea otter that had it, and they didn't know until it was pretty much down and out. They put the oxygen mask on, and it came out into the mask, and it was all the way down their lungs. So that's a huge thing that's happening right now that they're going to try to figure out. But now, let's get to our fun guys, the river otters. So again, oh, that's a really bad graph, or map. So again, the fur trade, they almost went extinct. So they gathered as many as they could. They brought them to Louisiana, and they had an otter farm there, just bred them, and they reintroduced them. Every graph, or every map I saw, says, so it's basically around this area where they've been reintroduced, some over here, but they said none have been reintroduced in North Dakota. So they're saying if there are any in North Dakota, they're native. There's none that be reintroduced. But every other map that I saw, we're saying there's otters all around here, but they're extinct here and they're extinct here. So I went and talked to the guy. Do we have river otters in North Dakota? Yeah, we sure do. So I went and said, hey, our trapping season just got done. We have river otters, and we don't have any information. So in North Dakota, we don't have a biologist that actually goes for river otters. It's actually up to us, which Brandy pointed out. You actually go on the Game and Fish and report every time you see river otters, and that's how we get all of our information. But nobody really knows that. Another cool thing, so this SSP guy, he's doing this study where he's getting samples from all these places that they've been reintroduced after they're dead or been trapped, and figuring out where the subspecies went. So the cool thing about this is if none have been reintroduced, but I'm sure they came up from South Dakota, if none have been reintroduced, this is a native population up here, so it's a whole different subspecies that they don't know about.
So they never went extinct and they just kept breeding and
Yeah.
never.
Again, I'm sure they just come from South Dakota, but let's say that we found out that there's a subspecies up here that they don't know about, that opens up the whole window to North Dakota for otter conservation.
You could be famous.
Yeah, oh yeah. But some otter cool things. There's this population of river otters on this lake. I just thought this was neat. Big boating community, everyone has a dock and a boat. The way their houses are basically make it a perfect habitat for dens. They can have their pubs, everything. And they really made it perfect so an otter's snoozing on a dock, somebody comes up to spook it or something is wanting to hunt it, just jumps in the water. They don't have to do their weird weasel run all the way over to the water. They said the only thing that people are irritated about is they poop on their docks and they climb in their boats and poop all the time. But they're making it work. I guess they're spending all their time just saying, hey, live with the otters. They said there's only one person that's actually like trying to poison them, but everybody else loves the otters.
What lakes
It's up in Canada somewhere. I don't know exactly where.
Okay.
And then otter poop. Speaking of that, so sometimes people put out trail cameras to look for animals and but some people bait, and that's kind of frowned upon. You don't really want to bait. But they put up a trail camera for these otters, and they basically went to their bathroom spot, and then that same night you had raccoons, possums, mountain lions, bears, everything coming in, and they're like, oh, maybe it's just an animal superhighway, but every single one of them stopped by and investigated. So it was kind of a neat thing of, oh, is otter poop the thing to get all these animals in?
The tastiest poop in the world,
Yeah,
apparently.
it is pretty stinky. Jeff, could you read that for me? The title?
What can we do with all this?
Thank you for asking. So, we could get sea otters, but we don't live by an ocean, and there's no SSP breeding program or anything, so there's really no point. But we can do more keeper chats. We can do more keeper chats and kind of promote that report thing. And actually, Jennifer made a QR code where we can put on the glass, and so everybody knows if you ever see an otter, you can just scan that. Once we get more information about our otters, then that's going to help us with trapping seasons and all that other stuff. We also got that AWARE grant, and they're part of that, so we're going to be doing an enrichment feeder device. So every time they get fed, they basically see us here at the zoo. We're going to take that away, and they're going to randomly be fed. And then we'll do keeper chats with them, kind of connect more empathy, watch them do their natural behaviors. And then we can promote that, report when you see an otter. And we can always just bump up our World Otter Day, which is actually the 31st. 31st of
May.
Thank you. Every May 31st, every year. Some other fun things, we actually have a lot of people working at the zoo. It's not every year. Okay. We also have a lot of people at the zoo, part of a friends group that help out the wildlife refuges. And so we could even do hobby studies where we just put out trail cameras. We don't have to make a study out of it or anything. We know where the otters are, and then we can report it. Another cool thing we could do is get those otter samples. The Game and Fish can just tell us every time they find a dead one. Get a hold of some trappers, get the samples, send them over to the SSP guy, and then he can pretty much do all the work. It's low cost. It's not really anything we have to worry about. We just get it. But the next time he does his presentation, instead of saying that they're extinct in North Dakota, he says, thanks to the Roosevelt Park Zoo, there are otters in North Dakota. So it'd be cool. And then we gotta show off our boy Loki right here. So this is Loki, our otter, and we're gonna get him ready for a vaccine here. So he goes into this tube, and I have a blunt needle here. He'll poke him,
touch,
he waits, and he goes out when I ask him to, and then he
good
gets
job,
finished.
bud.
Round of applause for him, right? Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about all this stuff? Yeah.